Senator John Fetterman is back in the hospital. Doctors are making sure he didn't suffer another stroke. We'll bring you the latest on his condition. Well, this morning, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is waking up in the hospital. He was kept overnight for observation after feeling lightheaded yesterday. Remember, he suffered a stroke just days before winning that primary race last May. He was off the campaign trail until August and went on to flip a key Senate seat in the face of real questions about his health. Our Dana Bash actually stopped him just briefly before the president's State of the Union address just 2 days ago. Listen.
Senator Fetterman, what do you think about your first State of the Union?
Yeah, just looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Said he was looking forward to it. Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is with us. Sanjay, good morning. So now they're looking, they're observing, they're trying to make sure he didn't have another stroke. Can you explain to us what doctors are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously one of those things because of his past medical history. If someone complains of lightheadedness, you have to be pretty diligent. There's lots of things that can cause lightheadedness, but as you put up there, I just want to reiterate sort of his past medical history. It's pretty significant. It was back in 2017 that he was first diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, and then it was May of 2022, May 13th of 2022, when he suffered atrial fibrillation, cardiomyopathy, and doctors used a thrombectomy to remove a blood clot. And he had a defibrillator and a pacemaker. There you go. Placed at that time. That was a long hospitalization. It was, he was in the hospital for 9 days at that point. What we know is that, he's had this significant past medical history, but in October of last year, the doctors released this note. This was just a few weeks now before the election, basically saying he has auditory processing issues. But other than that, he's pretty much ready to go in terms of return to work, do the sorts of things that would be required of him as a senator. And now you fast forward to this point where he has this episode of lightheadedness. Two things. One is that it could just be lightheadedness, which does occur in people. It can be for all sorts of different reasons. But also, given his past medical history, they have to be very diligent about this. If they're saying at this point there's no evidence of stroke, one thing to sort of point out from that standpoint is that it does take some time sometimes to figure out if someone has in fact had a stroke. What they're saying is he doesn't have symptoms of stroke right now, but I'm sure they're doing scans, they're looking at his heart to see if there's any other problems that are manifesting.
Sanjay, just to remind our viewers, it was his primary doctor who came out and said after that surgery that he, was going to be back to being able to do full work. We've never, heard from the actual surgeons who put that defibrillator in, right? So there are still questions, no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this was not a full medical record release by any means that were received at any point, including in October, right before the election. It was from his primary care doctor, but they talked about his overall condition, but not specifics about the medications or any other things that he may have had done.
Okay, Sanjay, stick around. We have a lot more to talk to you about in just a minute.
Breaking overnight, Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who is still recovering from a stroke, has been admitted to the hospital after he felt lightheaded. We have an update on his condition.
Senator John Fetterman is back in the hospital this morning after a health scare. We're told he felt lightheaded, and doctors have been running tests to make sure he didn't have another stroke. He did have a stroke last year. You'll remember when he was on the campaign trail. He refused to quit. He ended up flipping Pennsylvania's Senate seat for Democrats. Let's bring in our congressional correspondent, Jessica Dean on Capitol Hill. Jess, we just saw Dana talking to him right before the State of the Union. He seemed in good health, good spirits. What can you tell us about his condition this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Poppy. We know that he's still in the hospital. Right now, they're running additional tests. The positive news is that his office is saying that doctors are saying they don't believe there's been any new stroke, but they just wanted to keep him there overnight to run some more tests, keep him under observation. Let me walk you through exactly what they said happened, and then we can talk more about it. His office releasing a statement saying toward the end of this Senate Democratic retreat, which was happening in Washington, D.C., Senator John Fetterman began feeling lightheaded. He left and called his staff, who picked him up and drove him to the George Washington University Hospital. Initial tests did not show evidence of a new stroke, but doctors are running more tests, and John is remaining overnight for observation. And Poppy, as you mentioned, of course, he did suffer that stroke back in May. That's when he was running for the primary. He actually won that primary in the hospital. He was in the hospital for 9-10 days, and then, of course, had to recover. And we heard him. He would talk about slurring his words, missing his words on the campaign trail. And as you mentioned, I have seen him up here since then. He seemed to be going about business as usual. We're hoping to get an update. I've reached out to his office this morning, but so far have not heard back. But again, as far as we know right now, he remains in the hospital. They're still running those tests.
We're all rooting for him, all thinking about his wife and his family right now. Jess, thanks very much.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, he is in the hospital this morning. His office says that he felt lightheaded while attending a Democratic retreat yesterday, and the office is also reporting that he will remain hospitalized for observation and some more tests. You'll remember, of course, that Fetterman had a stroke during his campaign last year, and his office says initial tests show no evidence of a new stroke. We'll bring you updates on the senator's condition as we get them for sure.
And a new health scare for Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Well, we are learning about what sent him to the emergency room. That's next. Democratic Senator John Fetterman spent last night in a hospital. His office says that he felt lightheaded last night and was kept overnight for observation and tests. Fetterman's spokesperson says there is no evidence that he had another stroke. He did have a stroke last year during the Senate primary, and doctors implanted a pacemaker, and he was later released after 9 days in the hospital. Aides said that last night Fetterman was, quote, in good spirits and talking with his family and staff. So we all hope that he recovers and does well.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is in the hospital. He said yesterday that he started feeling lightheaded during a Democratic retreat.
Now, he was admitted overnight for medical observation. You'll remember he suffered a stroke in May of last year at the height of his primary campaign. CNN Capitol Hill reporter Melanie Zanona is with us with an update on his condition. Melanie, the doctors say there are no signs that he had another stroke. So what do they think happened?
Well, there's no word yet on exactly what caused this scary episode. They were running additional tests, and if all goes well, the senator could be released as early as today. But let me walk you through what happened here, according to his office. So this all started yesterday when Fetterman was attending the Democratic retreat here in D.C. The senator started to feel lightheaded, and so his staffers took him to the hospital where they ran some tests. They kept him overnight for observation. But the good news is there are no signs, according to his doctors, that he did suffer another stroke. But clearly, Fetterman is taking this very seriously, given his medical history. As you mentioned, last spring, he suffered a stroke when he was on the campaign trail. He was hospitalized for over a week. He had a defibrillator put in, and he has been recovering from that stroke. He's had some auditory issues that he's been struggling with. But again, the good news here, no signs that he did suffer another stroke, and we are hoping it stays that way, guys.